Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Divine Direction. And today we have a really good topic. It is on boundaries. Man, boundaries,
Jeez.
I'll tell you, they'll save your life.
Yes, they will.
They'll save your life.
Yes, they
right?
will. 100%.
Yeah. I had to learn how to have boundaries with people because I used to just be everybody free flowing, come on in. No walls or gates up, just,
Yep. Well, when I started in ministry, it was the same way. People asked me of things, and I was always yes. I didn't want to turn anybody down, and it was a little crazy.
Yeah, that people-pleasing spirit, that'll get you.
It really will.
Yeah,
and really
it's hard.
will.
As a minister and as a pastor, like it's, because it's like you have a heart for people and you want to help, but there really are those times where no is just a sentence.
Yep.
A whole sentence.
Yep.
Do you know how to just say no?
Yeah. Or this is not appropriate for me. I think there's very kind ways to let people know your boundaries, and especially when you're single. If you're a single woman, you need to, I always say that you set the ground rules before the heat of the battle. And so set ground rules, especially, in dating and in relationships. You set those ground rules. These are non-negotiables, and that way you can establish your boundaries pretty quick.
Right.
I love that you've made this very public statement about I'm not going to sleep with someone before marriage.
Yeah.
So someone understands that's a boundary. Now, does that mean that somebody going on a date with you is going to go, well, I'm pushing that boundary.
Right, absolutely.
I'm going to test her resolve.
Yeah, is kissing okay? When is kissing okay? And, because you always hear like, oh, we're not kissing on the first date kind of thing.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that we need to establish within ourselves, and getting those boundaries really clear for ourselves before we can enforce them. Because sometimes we could think, oh, I'm going to have these strong boundaries with people, but then we don't enforce those boundaries, and then people keep crossing the line. We end up upset at ourselves and them. So
yeah, and people can only do to you what you allow them to. And so you have to determine this is how I will be treated. We've spoken in other episodes about knowing your value. Once you know your value, you ask people to treat you according to your value. And, I always think, like, if you got a Maserati, you're not going to fill it with the cheapest gas you can find and think it'll be okay. You treat something the way that of its value, and we don't come with manuals. My poor husband, I always say, you didn't come with a manual, so I don't know how to treat a man, and I didn't come with a manual, so you're still trying to figure out women. and so what we do is we teach each other,
right?
And we help someone else understand, this is my boundary, I'm not comfortable with that, because nobody's reading a manual about you. You have to show them, I have value, and this is how I will be treated.
It's really interesting because just the other day I was with a friend, and she was telling her boyfriend, well, I want you over here. And she was upset with him because he wasn't reading her mind.
Oh, dear God.
I feel like a lot of times women, and I've seen this in a lot of women, okay, but I'm guilty of it too, but we expect these men to understand our minds, and we're not voicing what we're thinking, and then we get upset with them. It's so funny. But I literally watched this whole thing play out, and he kind of had his boundary with her, and he was like, I can't read your mind. And so he was,
good for him.
He let her know. And so it was there. Sometimes we just have to literally communicate what our boundaries are, what they are not, and make it very clear. Because I think with men, a lot of times, this is just what I've found throughout life, is like, they're very black and white. And with women, there's a lot of gray. There's a lot of like feelings and emotions, and we don't really make things as clear sometimes as men do. So one thing that I've been practicing is like trying to be a little bit more clear when I'm talking to the opposite sex.
Did you ever see there was a great show, Home Improvement, and he said, see this sign? And it said stop, real clear, stop. A man designed this sign, But if a woman designed this sign and he flips it around, it would say, if you really understood me, you'd know what to do.
Right. Or like there's a meme.
This poor guy.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. But there's a meme too that says like a man's day, and it's like one emoji, and it's like the same emotion throughout the whole day. And then it's like a woman's day, and it's like smiling, crying, laughing. It's like so funny because it's like all these different emotions with the woman, but the men are just like the same all day long. Anyways, it's just really interesting.
It's the same. And you know, when we create boundaries, I think it's essential that we're really clear with them, really clear.
Right.
You're right. Somebody can't read your mind. I have talked to women where they said, well, they should just know how to treat me. No, they shouldn't. Because the first thing, if you get something very expensive and you don't know how to work it, the first thing you're doing is looking at a manual and going, how does this work? I don't want to wreck it. But we don't come with that book. You don't send that book ahead of you and say, this is how you treat me, I'm worth something. But you help people be very clear.
Right.
We were talking about this week because somebody's big birthday was coming up, and they were typical woman mode. Well, I don't really want, well, you are going to throw me a party. No, I really don't want a party. I think I just want to go out to dinner. And the family members were all just, you know,
had her back.
And finally, they planned this beautiful dinner. And as they're getting ready for it, she's like, well, maybe I wanted a party. And her family was ready to strangle her.
Yeah.
But I have a friend who's a man, and he just had a big birthday. And I said, what do you want for your birthday? And he said, compliments and chocolate.
There you go.
And I thought, gosh, I love this.
Right,
I mean, I know
just
exactly
clear.
what to get the guy.
Clear and concise. I love it. You know what is really hard, though, I found it, you know, just in talking with friends and things like that, is that beginning stage of when you're dating somebody.
Yes.
And you're trying to find out, like, is this okay? Is that? And I don't mean just, like, physically, what can you do, you know, or whatever. I mean more so, like, you know, is it okay to, like, stay out too late? Is it okay to go out with friends and still go to certain scenes? You know, like I was talking to one of my hair girls, like she does my hair, and you know, she's in the dating phase, and the guy was just kind of like, well, why are you out so late? You know, and she didn't know because she was just having a girls' night. And so things like that, where it's like, what is okay, what's appropriate, what's not.
Yes.
But it's just having those real tough conversations and sitting down and saying, you know, I'm okay with this or I'm not. And I think it's a really strange time in that beginning dating stage.
Yes, it is. And it's not the conversation you have on the first date. Here's all my boundaries and you better understand them.
Right.
But it is clear. I think a first date is an important time to set sexual boundaries. I'm not comfortable with this, or
I've done that.
And I think that's important. I really do.
I have. And I've found I've had, oh my gosh, I'm going to talk about this. So one time I went out on a date with a lawyer, and just first date, you know, I was just like, you know, just so you know, I'm like saving myself for marriage. And he was like, okay. And he ended the date.
Right there?
Like right there. Like it was done. I was like, and
well,
then,
now that I know this isn't resulting in sex, I'm out of here.
I'm out of here.
That
Which
is
I was
so
like, thank
funny.
you, God. He wasn't even a believer. I don't even know why I was on the date with him.
Yeah.
They must have been bored or something. Anyways, and then there was another time
so funny.
I went on a date, and I actually find this more common. Most guys are like, wow, I respect that. Wow.
Yeah, most guys will say that.
Most guys are like, where the heck did you fall out of? Like, because they're not used to that at all. Even, no offense, but even like Christian women that they've dated still allow them that access. And so when I say that, like sometimes they're like, but do you really mean it? Like, wait, did you really go that long without it? Like, it, you know, but when I say that, they're like, wow. There's the respect level goes up immediately. And I have found in talking to some of my friends that like the men will do things for me that they don't do for other women because they're like, this one's like valuable. And so
100%.
I have
100%.
encountered some really good men that I feel like other women are like, where are you even like finding these at least decent guys? You know what I mean? So I do think that there is something really important about setting sexual boundaries right away.
I think so, because you immediately set your value. You immediately say, you know, I'm saving this for someone who's willing to give me their whole life.
Yeah.
And so it won't be tonight because you're not proposing marriage and we're not getting married after this date. So this is a gift, or this is something of value that will be given to the person that's willing to give me their whole life. And I think immediately it does say, wow, this woman is different.
Yeah.
Because I remember a man saying to me one day, we had a bunch of young guys that lived at our house, and this woman was really just throwing herself at this guy, and he said, I don't trust anything that comes that easy to me. And yeah, isn't that interesting?
It is interesting. I'm telling you, men, they have a very funny way of letting women know how they see them. Like sometimes it's in these subtle comments where you're like, whoa, because I've seen that happen before my eyes, like where a guy will just like, or even the way he looks at a woman or something, and I'm like, oh, he doesn't have any respect for her. You know what I mean? It's very interesting. But I think that's really good to enforce that and talk about that on the first date. I mean, why not?
Yes.
Because it clears out the trash, and you don't even have to take it out. Just it happens for you. Just saying.
I can't believe that. Well, and also it sets clear expectations. And I will tell you that I've watched women try to manipulate men into marrying them, but they haven't established their value in the man's eyes. And so when a man doesn't want to marry you, no amount of crying or manipulating is going to make that happen. But initially, if you establish, I have value here, and this is what it will require for you to be with me, especially sexually, then he understands right away, wow, first of all, this woman's different.
Right.
Second of all, now I know what will be expected of me. And really, I think a woman who understands her value can make a man step up and be a better man, really.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that by establishing that boundary of not having sex, it actually protects my heart.
Yeah.
Because I know before, when I didn't have that boundary and I was like sleeping around, before I met the Lord, I feel like I was just constantly in shambles. Like I would get emotionally attached, and it's just like waking up, like just worried, wondering where they're at. I mean, it's like a whole new world when you really decide to say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. And I remember it came with a lot of pain. Like the first time I made up my mind to not do it was many years ago. I think it was like, oh my gosh, in early 2000s or something. But I was in ministry, and I knew it was like, my friend had told me she had given up sex, and I go, yeah, right, I'll never be able to do that. That's something I'll hold on to. I love God, but I'll hold on to it. And God started to convict me. And then all the pain and all the hurt over and over and over. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let this go. And so I gave it up, and I went about 6 months, and I failed. And I was like so mad at myself, because I was like, am I ever gonna be able to really truly do this? So I started over again. And then I hit that year mark. And once I hit that year of going without sex, it was so much easier for me. Yeah. So it took some failed attempts, but then eventually it just got easier and easier. And then I started feeling so much better about myself.
Thank you.
That part, I felt like I was holding my head up higher. Men were treating me different. It's a good feeling to almost, it's not like, I want to say like you feel like you're in control, but it's really more that you're protecting something valuable. And that came from doing it God's way and not my way.
Yeah, and what the Lord says, that act, sexual intercourse, is the thing that makes you one. And so if you're sleeping around, you become one with many people, and of course then there's soul damage, there's the tearing apart of your soul, and also you don't know what's happening in your own body. I mean, you don't know lots of things at that point. So I think in terms of understanding your value in Christ, setting that boundary right away at least maintains your soul. It doesn't do soul damage.
Yeah. Literally, like, when you're sleeping around with people, you're literally like yoking up with those people's demons.
Yes.
Because you're allowing access into your temple, like into your body with whatever they've been, you know. I mean, it's like they say, like when you sleep with somebody, you've slept with who they've slept with.
Yeah.
So and that's even like I think it's medically. They even say like there's, you know, because it's like DNA and stuff. It's really crazy. But
it is scary.
It's scary. But I think more than anything, having that boundary of not having sex and keeping yourself until marriage, it has so many benefits. There's
100%.
so many more benefits than there are losses, you know. And at first it feels like, man, it does kind of feel like, oh my gosh, this is different, or you know, you kind of maybe feel like you're losing out a little bit, but eventually you start realizing that there's way more benefits than there are losses
100%
when you start to do it God's way.
Yeah, because you're protecting your soul.
Yeah.
And you don't walk around in shame or guilt or
no more walk of shame.
You know, no more walk of shame. And that does a lot for your self-esteem and for your understanding and for your clarity before God.
Yeah.
That, Lord, I'm doing my best here. And when you set that boundary, it is amazing how much people do respect that, wow, you have a boundary.
I know this is really strange, but I'm just going to talk about this. So, like, the moment I do that, I find that men want to work harder for me.
Yeah.
Like, because my friends would be like, Ashley, why do these men, like, they take you to these nice places and and it's a constant thing. And I'm like, honey, because they recognize the value. Like, they're not going to take me to the taco truck. You know what I mean? Like, if I didn't value myself, they might, but I'm just saying, you know, nothing wrong with taco trucks because I love them too. But I'm just saying, like, I realized that the moment I established that they want to work harder. Like, they want to, like, I don't know, it was like this, it was a crazy revelation.
But it also, it doesn't end with marriage. Obviously, having sex is a different thing when you're married, but it doesn't end with marriage, because once you understand who you are, then you also set value in terms of boundaries of, I won't be treated this way, or I will be treated that way. So I think setting boundaries when you're single, in terms of I will not, you know, your sexual boundaries, in terms of how you will be treated. I love that you just said, well, they're not going to take me to the taco truck, but the reality is how will you be treated? And if a man disregards you, then it's a good time to go, you know what? He doesn't have any respect for me. I'm done here. I'm done. I have a boundary that I will be regarded. And so if he doesn't respect you, it's a good time to say, I'm done here. You know, if you can't understand the value, then I'm done. So when you create boundaries of knowing the gift you are, they stay with marriage, because then in marriage, like I say, my husband Grady is teaching me how to treat him. Listen, I'm not a man. I don't understand how men work and think. And so, you know, the other day I was drilling him about why, because he had a girlfriend before me, and I said, well, why wasn't she the wife? Because when he met me, and we just met, he said to his mom, I met the girl I'm going to marry. If it isn't her, there's no one else.
Wow.
And I said, what was that difference? And he said, Christina, I never looked at her like marriage material.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
They say men know right away.
100%.
I feel like more than often, men know right away versus women. I've heard a lot more stories where women are like, well, it kind of took me some time to figure it out, but the men are like instantly like,
Yep.
what is that?
Well, I mean, maybe we need to have a man on the show and ask him.
and ask them.
What is that? But my husband said that. And I said, well, it would have been interesting then to be that girl and understand, wait a minute, this relationship isn't moving forward.
Right.
Clearly, I need to find someone who does see me as marriage material.
Yeah.
I think women stay in those relationships hoping to change that man. And when you understand boundaries and how you deserve to be treated with respect, that's the really important thing. Understand you are a child of the living God. He sees you as incredibly valuable. And when something's valuable, you don't put it on sale. You don't put that on sale. Listen, you have value, so you don't let somebody, you know, treat you like you are a throwaway object. And when they do, you say, okay,
That's
you know what? I'm going to find someone that understands the value of who I am.
A really good analogy I like is where they talk about the apple tree.
Yeah.
And they talk about don't be low hanging fruit.
Whoa.
That everybody can have. When you're low hanging fruit, you can just grab from the tree, and everybody can grab it because it's low. But the apples at the top of the tree require a little more work to get to the top and grab it. So be the high hanging fruit. Don't be the low hanging fruit. Don't be the rotten fruit at the bottom that everybody has access to.
Yes.
Be the high fruit that someone has to climb to.
Yes, yes. And you know, when you set boundaries, they last a lifetime. Because basically what you're telling anybody when you say, I'm not going to have sex till marriage, I'm valuable, and so this will be a reward for someone willing to commit their life to me.
Yes.
And so then when that person marries you, they understand, I married someone of value. I will treat her properly. Nothing bothers me more than when I see married couples demean each other publicly. You know, I just think, like, we had a young woman that I knew that I highly valued. She was such a quality woman, and she got married, and the first month we were with them as a young couple, and she went to sit on his lap, and he said, well, I don't want your big fat bottom on me. And I went, what did he just say to her?
I know a lot of men that would probably the opposite.
Yeah. And I went, I had to walk away. And I said to my daughter was shocked because she was so valuable in our eyes. And for him to treat her that way. And my thought was, that's not the first time he's spoken to her like that, and she needed to set a boundary.
Yeah.
You will not speak to me that way. I am not to be treated that way. I'll tell you what, my husband would not ever, first of all, not ever think of that, but not ever get away with talking to me like that.
Yeah, that's so good. I have a question. This is kind of a different, we have so many, there's boundaries in numerous ways, right?
Yes.
So we have like boundaries that we have with ourselves and with others. But I have a question for you with boundaries in marriage, right? So like, what are some boundaries that you have in your marriage, like with people of the opposite sex?
Oh, you mean Grady and I?
Yeah.
Oh,
I want to know that. Like that's like
well, we've been married, keep in mind we've been married a long time, 49 years this fall.
Wow.
And faithful, thank you, Jesus. Oh, God. But we immediately, we were young married. We always say you set the ground rules. In our first year of marriage, we'd been married 2 years. We counted 14 couples from Bible college that had divorced because of adultery or other things. I mean, we were in shock. So we sat up many nights late setting boundaries to protect what we had. And one of the big ones was Grady would never, or I would never be alone with somebody of the opposite sex ever. So that we couldn't be accused of anything. It doesn't even matter if it's not in you.
Right.
You don't want somebody to go, well, I was alone with her, and you know, we just never. And so, like when our children were little, he would pick the babysitter up with the children in the car.
Yeah.
And because they'd be asleep when we got home, I drove her home.
Oh, okay.
So there was, we lived above board.
Right.
And if I had to counsel a man, in which I have to say over my years of ministry, I've done that, it was always not in my office, in the sanctuary where everybody could see us.
Wow.
Always in broad places.
Right.
Because I wasn't ever going to be accused of anything that would be inappropriate.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking, because like you hear a lot of stories about pastors being accused of stuff like that from women, you know, and sometimes it's like not even about, like you said, that there's necessarily like unfaithfulness or adultery going on. It's just more so that there, like the Bible says, like if it even appears to be something that's evil, you want to stay clear from it.
100%.
So those are healthy boundaries in a marriage. Is like, and again, some people might think that's a bit extreme, you know, but I like that. I think those strong boundaries are really good, and it does keep a marriage together. Obviously,
100%,
there's fruit and evidence that what you guys are doing works, because you know, the divorce rate is astronomical right now, and that's amongst even Christians. You know, and so I think that those are some tangible things, some good takeaways, and saying, all right, you know, if you're newly dating someone, or maybe you're thinking about, you know, what are your boundaries that you're going to have with someone, maybe that's something you would discuss with
100%.
your new partner and say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, not being in the room with the opposite sex for a long period of time or whatever it is,
Yeah.
It's just,
Well, the question you can ask is, how will we protect this? If this is valuable, how do we protect this? What boundaries can we set up that will protect this? That's what we said. We made a covenant to each other.
Yeah.
And so how do we protect that covenant?
Yes.
And if you made that covenant, then it's worth keeping. So and I believe that God honors covenant.
Yeah.
So when you ask him to protect your covenant, I think he's protecting you in ways you don't always even know, but I think he protects us.
There's a story that's coming that I'm thinking about. I remember this pastor, and I like that he talks about this because I think that a lot more Christians need to be more transparent about these kinds of conversations. It's like, let's talk about it, because obviously not talking about it isn't working.
Nope.
So, but he went on the pulpit. He was preaching a message. It was like a Wednesday night or something. And he went up there and he was like, he's married, and he was like, there was a girl at work that was flirting with him. And he said the first couple times he kept taking the route that he knew she was going to be on. And then God started convicting him, and God said, take a different route this time. And so he started to avoid her. And literally the Bible says, resist the devil and he will flee.
Yep.
And so if you know you're being tempted by something, it's like you literally have to put that boundary up and not put yourself in that temptation. And also God says that he'll offer a way of escape before, he's not going to allow that to go. I remember one time it was like right when I had decided, like, I wasn't going to be sleeping around anymore. And I found myself, this was many years ago, I found myself at this really cute guy's apartment, right? It was like he had a high-rise apartment, and he was showing me all of Las Vegas, because I lived out in Vegas at the time, and he was showing me that, he lived in the high-rise right off the strip. And he was kind of trying to, like woo me a bit and stuff. And then he tried to, like, come on to me. We started kissing, and I was like, oh my gosh. And immediately it was like, I knew that I needed to get out of there. Cause I'm like, if we don't stop, it's going to keep going. And I had already said, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to, sleep around. And so all of a sudden there was a knock at the door, and it was one of his friends. And that was my way. And I was like, I'm out of here. And so I got out of there as fast as I could. But I remember thinking, like, that verse came to my mind, and I was like, oh my gosh, this was literally God's way of helping me to get out of that situation. Because I could have stayed. And what would have happened if I know what would have happened if I stayed. You know what I mean? So anyways, but there are times where we find ourselves in situations, and God does offer a way out.
I believe that. Yeah. My husband always prayed, Lord, lead me not into temptation. He said, I don't even want to face temptation. Wow. And I was really impressed with him as a young pastor, because we would talk to our staff all the time. We had one pastor we knew put a list of all the things he would lose on his desk if he fell into sin. I hate that term, fell into sin, because you don't fall into sin. You walk in boldly. I mean, falling means I tripped. Oh my gosh, I'm in sin. I never knew it happened. I'm sorry. You walk towards sin. And if you have the Holy Spirit in you, if you've asked Jesus in your heart, there's a prick of a conscience. You don't just fall. And so, but he said this guy kept a list of all the things he would lose: the respect of his children, he would lose the respect of his congregation, his marriage. I mean, he made that list, so the consequences were always before him. And we've always talked about that with our staff, so that we kept our hands extra clean. And like you said, some of that stuff looks like really your babysitter. Well, all I ever needed was a 15-year-old to accuse my husband, and that would have been the end, right? Jeez. So we just never gave an open door there. He was never alone with anybody like that. Yeah. It was important.
Yeah, that's why I asked, though, because it's like you just never know what's realistic, and what's a little harsh or what's extreme. But like I said, I think that those really strong boundaries are good to keep.
Well, and we can talk about this more later, but I also think boundaries of not allowing people to speak ill of your spouse or your fiance. I set those boundaries real quick with my family. My mom wanted to talk bad about my husband. And I said, I'm sorry, Mom, this is my husband. I will not listen to that. And I think you set boundaries to protect covenants. So if you're in a relationship, you need to already be determining, I'm not going to let people speak evil of them or sow seeds of discontent into this relationship. I need to hear the Lord. Those are important boundaries, because I think too often girlfriends get jealous. Listen, I had a girlfriend when I was dating my husband that tried desperately to break us up because she was jealous. And her jealousy never ended after we got married. So there's people that will come at you in anything that's God designed. And I saw that initially in my relationship with my husband. Satan tried to destroy, and you set boundaries and say, I will not listen to things that people want to say against my spouse or against my fiance. It's not going to happen.
Wow.
Now, do we hear the Lord? Yes. You don't ignore things that are serious. But people that want to just start speaking badly, badly to destroy you, you got to think those are important boundaries as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like protecting your eyes and your ears.
And your heart.
Yeah, and your heart.
Yes.
Wow, that's good.
Really important. Really important.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you enjoyed these gems, and like I call Pastor Christina the mic dropper. You got to get your notebook out so you can take some good notes from this amazing woman. There's always so much wisdom and stuff to gather from her. But we hope you enjoyed this we hope you enjoyed this episode, Divine Direction, and make sure to tune in again.
Yes, thanks so much for being with us.